you. Who else could it be but your man Lou? Yeah.
And overtime.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to Monday Night Football Overtime. Giants, Falcons. And this was a game that really either team could ill afford to lose or could afford to lose. It was one of those games where for the Giants, really their season was already dead. It was DOA, dead on arrival. This game wasn't really going to make that big of a difference. But, you look at the NFC East and you look at the records in that division and you say, if the Giants could get hot, they've only played 2 divisional games. Who's to say what the hell could happen, right? But let's face it, the Giants aren't a good football team. And they don't score enough points on offense. And we pretty much know who the Giants are. They're going to be one of the worst teams in the league yet again. They're probably going to win 4 games max. 5 if they're lucky, but more likely 4 or 3 games this season, just like they did last year when they went 3-13. And it's amazing. All those years with Tom Coughlin, and I don't think they ever lost. I don't think they ever lost double-digit games, and if they did, they never went below 10. 6-10. So it's amazing. Now they're gonna 2 straight years have arguably 2 of the worst records they've had in franchise history in back-to-back years with 2 different head coaches and pretty much the same roster. So they've got a lot of work to do in New York. That is for certain. The late game clock management was just excruciating and god-awful. And if you're a Giants fan, it's that level of incompetence that makes you ask the question, who the hell is in charge of this operation anyway? I mean, that was painful to watch, and I hate the Giants, and yet that was painful to watch. The whole night for the Giants was painful to watch because you can tell there's a level of disconnect between every level of this football team right now. Players, coaches, front office. There's a lot going on right now. Odell Beckham Jr. doesn't trust Eli. Eli doesn't trust just about anybody on the field, especially his offensive line. The coach doesn't trust Eli, even though he wants everyone to believe that he does. We all saw the play on 4th down where he said, "Come on, Eli. What are you doing? Throw it to Odell." What are you doing, guy? So there's a level of distrust throughout that whole entire locker room right now. And I can't say that I blame them because it seems like nobody's doing their job adequately. And there's a lot of finger pointing going on. And when you lose, this is what happens. It's why they say winning is the best deodorant in sports, because you win, it covers up a lot of deficiencies. You lose, and everyone has their opinion on how to fix things, or they're just disgruntled and they want to point fingers as to why things are going the way that they're going. And a lot of times, guys don't like to take the finger and point it to themselves. They like to point it elsewhere. So that's how you get to a situation where you're 1-6 like the Giants are, and really no light at the end of the tunnel in sight for this Giants football team right now. As far as the Lions or the Falcons are concerned, this was a must-win because they're not dead yet. And I keep preaching to my sister every week. My sister's a huge Falcons fan, that you're not dead yet. Your season is not over yet. You're still in the thick of things. You just got to find a way to stay afloat until you get some of these guys back healthy. I know everyone's not coming back, like Keanu Neal's not coming back, but Deion Jones is coming back. All right. At some point, you're gonna get your other running back in Devontae Freeman. You're gonna get some of these guys back, so you just gotta hang in there and see what happens. Your division is tough. We already knew that going into the season. I said before the season started, the AFC North and the NFC South were going to be the 2 toughest divisions in football. I still believe the AFC North is going to be the toughest division when it's all said and done, but the numbers don't lie. Right now, the NFC South is the toughest division in football. The Falcons are the only team in that division with a sub-500 record, and everyone in that division has at least 3 wins to their name. The same can't be said for the AFC North right now. with the Browns being the lone team in that division without 3 wins. But both divisions are extremely, extremely competitive. But this division may be out of reach for you, especially being that you already lost to the Saints at home. So I don't see you going to New Orleans and winning, not out of the realm of possibility. And if I'm not mistaken, that's a Thanksgiving night game, if I'm not mistaken, which I am just salivating to watch. But that's nor here nor there. You're probably not going to catch those guys. But there's no reason you can't catch Carolina. You already beat them once. And you have no problems going into Carolina and winning, although I don't see that happening. But there's no reason you can't catch the Panthers. You know, there's no reason you can't get your hand on a wild card if you turn things around. What a difference 6 weeks make. Remember, we sat here on a Thursday night, week 1, after the opening game of the season, and we talked about how bad Matt Ryan looked and how he wasn't elite, how their offensive coordinator should be fired, and how he doesn't get it, and how they're not using the backside of the backfield, and they're not maximizing the talents on this offense. And so Sark was a problem yet again. How Julio Jones was the only receiver that they had, and that they got to get other weapons for Matt Ryan, and this and that and the third. And this defense is going to have to carry this team again because the offense isn't any good. And now look where we are with this Falcons team a whole 6 weeks later. Matt Ryan looks like an MVP candidate again. Steve Sarkisian looks like he's starting to figure it out with Matt Ryan and this offense and all the weaponry that he has at his disposal. There are so many weapons in Atlanta, it's not even funny again. You don't necessarily have to get it to Julio every single time. There's Calvin Ridley. There's check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Guess who? Mohamed Sanu. There's Austin Hooper. There's the backside of the backfield. And really, I should say Tevin Coleman. Speaking of which, I love Tevin Coleman. I've said this before on lockdown coverage. Tevin Coleman is my favorite of the 2 backs. And if I were the Falcons, he would have been the one that I would have kept. But you've already paid money to Devontae Freeman. So I don't think Tevin Coleman is going to be back. That's why you drafted Ito Smith, because you knew that you weren't going to be able to pay both of these backs. You chose which one you wanted to keep. So now I think Tevin Coleman is going to be the odd man out. I think he's going to get paid a lot of money, and I think he is a hell of a back. Similar to the Dolphins and Lamar Miller. I loved Miller. I wanted the Redskins to sign him. I'd love my Redskins to take a shot at Tevin Coleman. But again, I don't think that running back price range that he's going to be in the market that he's going to command is going to be in the Redskins price range. He would fit so perfectly in a Kyle Shanahan scheme. Remember they were together? I'd love Kyle Shanahan to take a run at Tevin Coleman. He fits so perfectly in San Francisco. He'd be a 1,200-yard rusher in San Francisco. And I know they got Jerick McKinnon, but McKinnon to me is a third down back. I don't think I like Jerick McKinnon in a feature back situation. I'd love to see Coleman get a shot to be the guy in San Francisco with the secret weapon known as Jerick McKinnon as his backup. But that's another discussion for another day. Tevin Coleman is a hell of a football player, and I hate the fact that he's probably not going to be in Atlanta next year, but I think he's the better of the 2 backs. I think he's the more durable, and it's funny to say that because he had his health issues of his own throughout his Atlanta Falcons career, but of late, I think he's been the better of the 2 in terms of health as well. But he completes this offense to me. You know, he's a physical, in-between-the-tackles runner when he wants to be, but he can bounce it outside. He's got the speed to take it the distance. We saw that on the game-clinching touchdown, essentially, tonight. So he's a guy that I really like, and he can catch it, too. And we saw him catch it on a third down in this game as well. So this Falcons offense, it's complete. They got a number of guys that can hurt you at any time, and Matt Ryan looks to be back into that 2016 zone again. And a lot of us, and I know I was guilty of this with Sark in terms of the red zone, but I kept saying we had to give Sark a chance. We had to give Steve Sarkisian a chance to mesh. Remember, Matt Ryan wasn't exceptional in year 1 with Kyle Shanahan. Remember that? Remember the playbook was too thick, and they were having all kinds of issues. The offensive line stunk, and that was pre-Alex Mack, and so there were problems along the offensive line, and it didn't look good that first year with Kyle, but the second year was ridiculous. We know about the historic run they made to the Super Bowl and the MVP season for Matt Ryan. We're seeing year 2 of Sark, and it's looking eerily similar to that. And remember how we talked about the defense in Atlanta, and now all these injuries, and they're shuttling themselves. how wrong were we? Let me not speak for you. How wrong was I? I can only speak for myself. I was super wrong tonight because I thought this was going to be a shootout of epic proportions. I said neither one of these teams will be able to stop each other. This is going to be just like the last couple of Monday nights we've had. Remember last week was a 33-30, if I'm not mistaken, shootout with the Packers and the 49ers. A couple of weeks before that, we had the Tampa Bay-Pittsburgh game, 30-27. I thought we were on a crash collision in a crash course for another one of those types of games tonight, and I was wrong. This game was 7-0 with about 4 minutes left in the second quarter, and it was so low scoring that I didn't even realize we were that close to halftime. And my girlfriend was like, this game is so boring. This is garbage can juice. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's a physical, solid, defensive struggle. But I didn't realize how close we were to halftime. And so I was way off on the points. If you would have told me that the points going into the game were 47, I would have said I'll take the over on that. What would the score end up? 23-20, so it was 43 points. I thought there would be way more points in this game. But in any event, I love the fact that the Falcons were able to get to Eli Manning, get him off his spot, but more importantly, stop Saquon Barkley. We saw what he could do on Thursday night last week versus the Eagles. Even though it was in a loss, he was dynamic and special. There are two guys on that, or three guys with Ingram back now from injury. There are three guys on that Giants football team that are game changers. I like Sterling Shepard, but he doesn't scare anybody. It's Odell Beckham Jr. Shame on you if you step to the old dirty Beckham. There's Saquon Barkley, obviously, and Evan Ingram. Those are the three guys that can hurt you. Those are the three guys that are dynamic, that can run, that at any given play from anywhere on the field can hurt you for a big play and score a touchdown. But the first key when you're playing the Giants is take away Saquon Barkley. Don't allow him to impact the game with a 75-yard catch and run or a 55-yard touchdown run. Nothing quick for the Giants. They struggle to score. Their easiest method of getting into the end zone is quick striking. You saw how they struggled in the red zone tonight. You heard the woeful numbers Eli had. He was a 1 of 7 before the touchdown pass to Odell in the back of the end zone as time was about to expire. He was 1 of 7 in the red zone tonight. Like, they're awful in the red zone. They can't score. So if you keep them from the explosive plays and you make them drive 13 plays for 75, they can't do it consistently. They've proven that this year. They're one of the worst teams offensively in all of football because they have to have explosive plays in order to function. That's why they scored 30 against Carolina, because they were able to put up some explosive plays in that game to help them get quick strikes. But if you take that away from them, it's 13, it's 10, it's 17, it's 16, it's 20 like tonight. And most weeks, you're not going to win in this league with 20 points. Most weeks, it won't be enough. And I thought their defense actually played well because Atlanta had been going up and down the field on just about every team they had faced over the last 5 weeks or so. So to see the Giants get pressure on Matt Ryan and reduce this explosive, high-octane Falcons offense to next to nothing for essentially 3 quarters, that was impressive. And they gave the Giants a chance tonight, did the Giants defense. And unfortunately, the offense just didn't respond. Odell Beckham did his best to try to give them a spark. But it's all about offense in the red zone. It's all about scoring touchdowns in this league. You can go 20-20 all you like. Hell, Eli had 399 yards passing. What does that amount to? 20 points, and really 13 if you take away the touchdown with 5 seconds left in this game. So you can have all the yards you want. We've seen Belichick and the Patriots give up 400 and 500 yards of total offense routinely. They don't give a shit about yards. What they care about are the points. And if I can clamp down and get you to kick field goals in the red zone, which is what the Giants did tonight, you're going to lose football games. And so kudos to the Falcons for bending but not breaking. They've broke over the last 5 weeks or so, whether it's the Cincinnati game, whether it's the New Orleans game, whether it's the Tampa game last week. They broke a bunch of times. They didn't break tonight. They forced the Giants to settle for field goals. And even when the Giants were being stupid and going for 2, and again, I understand the thought process. You suck. You're similar to the Titans. But for the life of me, I can't understand why coaches think, hey, we're struggling. Let's just go for it. Just the hell with it. That's what you do when it's 4th down and 7, you're 1-5, and you're down by, let's say you're down by 9. And there's 7 minutes left in the game. To hell with it. Let's go for it. We're 1-5. What do we got to lose? Not when you have a chance to potentially tie the game, as in the case of the Tennessee Titans, or not if you got a chance to cut it to a 1-score game. And again, it still was a 1-score game, but why are you going for 2 multiple times? That's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. Go for the extra point. Your kicker has been just about automatic in Aldrich Rosas. It's been automatic this season. Kick the damn extra point. Keep it at 7. And if you want to go for the gusto, if you want to go for the jugular, you want to go for the jugular vein and the dub at the end, when you score the touchdown and cut it to 1, then you go for 2 then, like the coach for the Titans, Mike Vrabel, did. That's when you go for 2. Not before. Not when you have a chance to cut it to 7. Not when if you miss this, then it's 8 and you have to just go for 2 to tie the game. Where's the psychological sense in that? But again, there's no rationalizing things with people who are irrational. And right now, the Giants as a whole, the whole entire organization, they're irrational right now. They have no idea what's going on. Eli has no idea what's going on. The offensive line has no idea what's going on. The coaching staff has no idea what's going on. They are clueless right now in New York. And I'm not going to lie to you. It's fun to watch. It's fun to watch a team in the division. It's fun to watch a family member struggle, especially one that's had a lot of success over the last decade and a half. It's fun to watch them struggle because I know they take pride and pleasure in watching us struggle, and we do it quite often. So it's fun to watch the shoe be on the other foot, and I'm sitting back from afar and analyzing the situation, and I wouldn't be shocked if the Giants made some kind of drastic move here as we approach the trade deadline. I think if you're going to make a move, if you're the Giants, you don't do it until after the season. You don't do it until we start approaching the draft. If you're going to say trade for, I don't know, maybe Derek Carr, you don't do that now. You do that next year after season's over as you're preparing for the draft. You see what kind of draft standing you're going to have, what players you like, what players you don't like, who can you get your hands on. Then you start making moves that alter your franchise's direction. You don't do that now. So we'll see what happens. But I can tell you right now, the Giants season is officially over at 1-6. They're going to still be competitive. They're still going to play hard because I think their coach, and I do like their coach, Pat Shurmur. I think he's clueless at times, and I think he's less clueless than people think. I think he understands what this team needs. I just don't think he has the means to go about it right now. Eli Manning, he saw what happened to the last coach and general manager when they thought it was a good idea to bench Eli. He understands that Eli is holding his team back. He can't go out publicly and say what he wants to say. All he can say is, hey, we love Eli. He's our leader. He's our guy. We're going to stick with him. But behind closed doors, he's saying, Eli is killing us, man. And he's going to watch that play on 4th down back with the rest of his coaching staff, and he's going to say, God damn it, Eli, pull the trigger. He's open. That's what we diagrammed. That's what we called the play for. Throw the effing football. He's going to be upset. And he's going to see the play where Odell is open in the back of the end zone. That was partly Odell's fault because, like Jason Witten beautifully laid out, he stemmed the route and he stuck his foot in the ground, and you didn't need a stick there as if it was man-to-man coverage. Just round the route off into the corner because the cornerback on that side, he's closing up on that flat route. So you need to just round it off and get to the pylon as quick as you can. And Eli was anticipating that. So there was a little bit of miscommunication there and a little bit of timing off on the throw. It looked like Eli overshot him, but it really was Odell doing the most on the route where he just needed to get back into the corner of the end zone. And so it made it look like Eli was a little off and errant with the throw, but they're just out of sync. They're out of sorts. And the only thing worth watching them for is really Saquon Barkley. And again, Odell Beckham Jr. too. So I guess I'll say there are two guys that still make that team dangerous. I as a Redskin fan, am still afraid of the Giants. We have them next week. It'd be just like my team to go to the Meadowlands next week, lay a stinking, fat, nasty egg, lose to the Giants 17-13, and have the Giants beat us because Odell got us on a 63-yarder and Saquon got us for a 57-yarder, and that was the 2 Giants touchdowns, and we lost the game 17-13. I could easily see that bullshit happening next week, but that's nor here nor there. If you're the Falcons, good win, and maybe this defensive showing tonight, and again, I get it. It's the New York Giants, and they stink on offense. Granted. But maybe this is a little bit of a turning point for your defense. Maybe they build off of this performance, and maybe you start to see a defensive unit that comes together and plays a little bit stronger. If they can get anything out of their defense, that being the Atlanta Falcons, they're a dangerous team because their offense is top notch. Their defense has been the problem this season with all the injuries, and so if they could just get a semblance of what we thought they were going to get out of their defense this year when healthy, this is a dangerous Falcons team that I refuse to count out. And so we'll see what the Falcons do in the coming weeks, as this is a dangerous Falcons offense. And if they can just get something out of the defense, they could be a team that easily gets back into that divisional race and makes a push for a wild card at worst this season. So let's get to some comments, because I told you guys I was going to carve out a little bit of time for the trade with the Cowboys and Amari Cooper. Also, Patrick Peterson has demanded his way out of Arizona. I talked about that on the lockdown coverage. For those of you who have access to the podcast, you should have access to the podcast. It's on iTunes. It's on Stitcher. It's on Google Music Play. It's on the website, louietnetwork.net. So check out lockdown coverage. That's out already, hot off the presses. I broke down every single game in week number 13 that I haven't broke down on one of these live platforms. So check that out. But I talked about Peterson briefly on that lockdown coverage podcast. And so I'll clear out a little space for him, the Amari Cooper trade, and any other trades that may happen before the October 30th trade deadline in the National Football League, which we are approaching. Next Wednesday is the trade deadline, and I think there should be maybe 1 or 2 more big-time trades between now and then. And just so you know, I see somebody commenting about the kicker for the Falcons, Giorgio Tavecchio. Isn't it ironic that he was the field goal kicker for the Oakland Raiders before they decided, we're going to clean house at field goal kicker and sign a bum, and that bum stinks. And he just missed a 48-yarder. And I heard Gruden say this, and I was appalled, and I'm like, I don't think he meant to say that. He couldn't have meant that and still be employing this guy. He missed a 48-yard kick over in London. And John Gruden said, yeah, that's about as far as we trust him kicking the football right now. If you've got a kicker that you can't trust kicking it from 50 plus, then he shouldn't be your field goal kicker in today's NFL. This isn't 1991 where a 48-yard field goal is a long field goal. Yeah, in theory it's a long field goal, but guys are hitting those in their sleep now. You know, anything 0 to 49 is a 90% chance field goal in this league now. You should be hitting that at a 90% clip. It's 50 and above when that percentage comes down to somewhere in the 77 to 84% range. But if you are talking 0 to 49 yards, man, your kicker better be able to put that shit through the uprights. And we've seen 2 weeks in a row now, head coach Dan Quinn trust his kicker to bang it home from 56 yards to put a game away. And obviously, he doesn't trust his defense late in the game, and I wouldn't trust them either. They've had the Saints game. They've had the Bengals game. They almost allowed the Bucs to come back and win. So I totally get it from the standpoint of Dan Quinn. And we saw what happened with the Giants. Right after the field goal, first play, Sterling Shepard down the sideline for about 60 yards, and just like that, they're inside of the red zone. So he knew what he was doing. That's why he put Tavecchio out on the field, and he banged it home from 56. And I could have told any team looking for a field goal kicker that Giorgio Tavecchio I keep always call him Giorgio. I don't think his name is Giorgio, but I know his last name is Vecchio. His ass can kick. Watched him kicking in Oakland last year, and I had no idea why the Raiders cut him loose. But as you look around at the Raiders landscape now, you understand why they did it. They did it because they don't have a reason why. They're just the Oakland Raiders. So let's go to the comment section. And RG3 hashtag starts us off with the Giants were going to lose anyways, even if they went for the extra point. That is a fact, but there's still a way to go about doing that. You don't go for 2 in that spot. You go for 2 like the Titans did at the very end to try to go win the game if you're going to go with that modus operandi. If you're going to try to steal the game at the end, then you need to do it at the very end, not with 5 or 6 minutes left in the game and your team possibly needing to have to score a touchdown and then go for another 2 because you just missed another 2-point conversion. It just doesn't make any sense. Deron Johnson says, congrats on your win, but tough loss for my Ravens still hurts. Yeah, that was a tough one, tough bitter pill. And I talked about this on my podcast, the Lockdown Coverage podcast, so I'm not going to really elaborate on it too much, but what shocked me is that you were up 17-7 in the late stages of the third, early fourth, if I'm not mistaken, and to give up the lead in a situation where you give up 17 unanswered points, that was shocking to me, especially off the defensive performance last week versus the Titans. And I get it, the Saints are not the Titans, but that was shocking to me. But I got Munson says, as a Skins fan, I got to admit, sometimes I feel bad for Eli. I know I shouldn't. I know he has 2 rings, but good Lord, that O-line is god-awful. I don't feel bad for Eli whatsoever, not the slightest. Reese says, the Giants are now 4-19 since that boat picture went viral a way back. That has nothing to do with nothing, Ree. That is funny, though, but it has nothing to do with nothing. I got Munson says, $15 million for that left tackle. Good Lord. That tackle being the ex-New England Patriot, Nate Solder, which I could have told you he wasn't worth $15 million a year. But again, when you're the Giants and your offensive line stinks and you got to do something in the meantime, can't fix everything overnight via the draft. You got to go out and you got to spend some money in the left tackle, one of those premium positions you got to spend on. No, Nate Solder is not the best option, but he was an option and they had to pay for that option. So he also says, thought the Giants defense fought all night even though they allowed 18 straight completions. No walk in the park for the Skins next week. You know how I feel about the Giants, and I know that this is not going to be a walk in the park, and I'm going to reinforce that tomorrow. Don't you worry. Reese says, did you see the Bucs game, Lou? That was some crazy shit, wasn't it? I did, and I talked about it on the lockdown coverage. You guys should have lost that game, Ree, and you know you should have lost that game. But in any event, Emperor Meat says, Giants coming for that number 1 spot, number 1 draft pick, that is. Like the Ludacris song says. He says, also, what's up with the morons who say Odell is overrated? Internet dudes are dumb. I don't know what they're watching. Odell Beckham Jr. is still one of the most dynamic and explosive receivers in this league. Still a dangerous guy anytime he touches the football. Still scares the hell out of me. I'm terrified for next week because the Redskins are good for 1 busted coverage and 1 blown assignment or 1 guy just getting toasted every single week. So I'm scared to death because Odell is the king of roasting somebody on a double move and getting free for about a 70-yard touchdown. And so I'm definitely nervous about next week and what the Giants could potentially prove to be for my Redskins. In any event, Blackbird Blitz says, Freeman is better, but Free can't stay healthy. I'm not sitting here and disputing who's better. I love Devontae Freeman. He runs hard. He catches the football. He's shifty. He's not as fast as Tevin Coleman. I'm a Tevin Coleman guy though, but you know this because I told you a million times. I like upright runners. I like the big, tall backs. I like the guys that are 6'1", 6'2". Tevin Coleman right around 6'1". I like those guys better. So you already know. That's why I love Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson is 6'2" back. That's why my favorite running back of all time, not named Barry Sanders, is Eric Dickerson. I love the upright runners. So obviously Tevin Coleman would appeal to me more so than Devontae Freeman. But I'm not here to dispute which one's better because I love them both. I think both of them are extraordinary backs, and I just think Coleman is a guy that is able to stay healthy. I like his speed, and I know he can catch it out of the backfield as well. Ricky L says, "What's good, bro? I'm football related, but what's your favorite 5 movies of all time?" That's another discussion for another day. Sean Mack, what's going on, Matt? He says, Eli needs to retire and the Giants need to upgrade that O-line as well because it's worse than even my Browns. Yeah. I think my dad has said this at least 5 times this year that Eli needs to hang it up. I think this is it for Eli. I would hope he understands the writings on the wall. And I think in his mind, he's rationalizing everything by saying, look, this offensive line in front of me stinks. If I had time, I can still play at a very high level. And that may even be true, but I think it's time for Eli to go. I think nobody wants to see Eli be sat down and demoted and embarrassed. Just go out on your own terms. Don't make this thing ugly and have this situation end in a way that's uncomfortable for everybody involved. Just go ahead and call it a night and look, let everybody praise you. And you know what you could do? This is a terrible season, and you see what it is. You should announce this around week 12 so that the rest of the NFL can throw you a going-away party. Just go out with a big bang. Let everybody serenade you with all kinds of showers of praise, and let everybody start talking about how good Eli Manning is, and go out with a bang. Just do the Tiki Barber thing, and just tell everybody that you're done so that we can Derek Jeter you and make you feel good on the way out. How about you do that? Week 12, say, yeah, I've sat down with my family, and I've come to the realization that this is a young man's game, and it's passed me by, or I've had my fair share of time, and it's time for the young guys to take over, and let everybody just give you the love that you've never gotten throughout your whole career. So why don't you do that? I think that's a good idea. Dre True Statement says, is the Falcons defense starting to show improvement, or is the Giants O-line and team that bad in your opinion? It's a combination of both, probably more so the latter than the former. It's more the Giants offensive line than it is the Falcons showing fight defensively, but I think the Falcons have some talent. I told you I really like DeMonte Casey. I told you that I think the speed that you have in the front 7 may be unmatched in this league. And so there's a lot of stuff, and I thought that your front 4, your pressure tonight was outstanding, but that Giants offensive line, it stinks. It's kind of like my Redskins getting pressure yesterday. Now, we blitzed a lot more yesterday, but we were able to beat the Cowboys offensive line, which was a little surprising, but maybe their offensive line had a bad day and we were able to take advantage. Our guys haven't gotten pressure like that all season long. Your guys haven't gotten pressure like that all season long. So I would need to see it again against a better opponent before I took this and ran with it. But if you're the Falcons, any improvement is improvement worth building upon. And so you'll take what you did tonight. You'll be excited about the prospects of maybe you getting better defensively, and you hope that they build on what they did tonight moving forward. Reese says the Giants quarterback situation was already a mess. Now they have turned it into a train wreck by passing up on a quarterback in this past year's draft. I don't agree with the people that think they should have taken a quarterback. I think they did the right thing because they stink again. And even if they had taken a quarterback this year and Eli said he wanted to play, what were we going to do? Bench Eli? We've been here before. I don't think the Giants were going to do that. So what were you going to do? Eli didn't want to quit. You don't want to get rid of Eli if he still wants to play. So there was going to be a dilemma here. I think you're going to stink again, which we see they're going to be in the top 5 drafting this year most likely. And you're going to get a quarterback. If you like any of these guys, whether it's the Oregon quarterback or it's the Missouri quarterback or whomever fits your taste buds at the quarterback position, you're going to be in a position to draft somebody. I think they did the right thing because you get the right quarterback, you couple them with Saquon Barkley, you fix the offensive line, and all of a sudden now the Giants, you got Odell Beckham, you got Evan Ingram, you got Sterling Shepard, you got some weapons. All of a sudden this Giants offense is ridiculous. You get 1 or 2 pieces to fit into place, and look out. All of a sudden the Giants are dynamic again. So I don't believe that they made a mistake last year. Black LB says, what it do, Lou? Happy Victory Monday, good brother. He says, what's the deal with Kirk Cousins' pocket awareness and tendency to hold on the ball too long, which leads to fumbles? Hey, look, man, that's part of the Kirk Cousins package, bruh. Take it or leave it, all right? His thing is he likes to try to stay in the pocket. First of all, he was in Washington where his offensive line used to give him all day to throw. And so he's one of those guys that wants to survey the field and go through 5 progressions and try to find somewhere to get the football to, all right? And he's not used to being behind the offensive line. Well, last year gave him a little bit of prep for what was to come this year behind your shoddy offensive line. But before then, you know, the Redskins in 15 and 16, they used to give him all day to throw. There would be times where he would be building a house in the pocket. Last year, not so much. This year, definitely not the case. And what Kirk needs to do is protect the football better. He's always had an issue with protecting the football once he gets hit. His pocket awareness has never been the best, but that's something you just got to take. You take the good with the bad. Every quarterback has a flaw. His happens to be lack of awareness of his surroundings and subsequent fumbles for that lack of awareness, not putting both hands on the football and securing it tightly. So you just got to take that. That's something that you're just going to have to take. Dre True Statement says, he says, in your opinion, was Barkley the right pick for the Giants? And I just answered that. Shaw Mack says, I am considering taking your Redskins for my survivor pool pick in week 8. I'm going to tell you this. I don't like giving out my secrets, my tricks of the trade, but I've done this already because, you know, back in the day when I used to give out my weekly picks, I would tell people this all the time. I would tell you viewers this all the time. So I'm going to share it with you again, but I'm not going to share this with you too many more times because, again, I don't like sharing my secrets with you guys. Generally, I don't meddle in family business that is not my own, okay? That is one of my rules. If it's not my family business, I tend to stay out. This is my family business, okay? So I could make an executive decision here, but generally, I tend to stay away from family business because it's not advantageous. Family business games are the worst to predict because they are unpredictable. These teams know each other very well, and anything could happen. Expect the unexpected. I've seen too many of these games go sideways for me to involve myself in the politics of picking between 2 family members. So generally, the rule of thumb going into a survivor pool, rule number 1, stay away from family business. Rule number 2, stay away from road teams unless you are certain that team can get it done on the road, i.e. the Rams yesterday versus the 49ers. That was a double whammy, but because the Rams are so good, they supersede rules 1 and 2. That's rare, but that's how it goes in survivor pools. If you usually abide by those 2 rules, you're going to find yourself sticking around in a survivor pool for a very, very long time. That being said, you can go right ahead. I encourage you to take the Redskins. I'm not messing with that with a 10-foot pole. I know my boys. I know that the letdown is coming at some point. I would hope it's not week 8 versus the Giants, but stranger things have indeed happened to me and my Redskins. Emperor Meat says, Pat was seen on the sidelines yelling at Eli to throw it to Odell in that 4th and 1 play, which is what I mentioned at the top of the show. He's been low-key frustrated with Eli for weeks. He was mad at Eli for not throwing it down the field versus New Orleans. And he should have been. There were opportunities to take shots down the field versus New Orleans in that game, and he just refused to do it. And he was checking it down on 3rd and 18 with guys running open down the field, 20, 30 yards down the field, and he's checking it down in a no-win situation. And so I know behind closed doors, Pat Shurmur is like, man, we need to get Eli the F out of here. But he can't say that publicly, and he's got to continue to endorse Eli, but he's frustrated, and you know he is. You know he is. Reese says, my Bucks need a guy like Patrick Peterson. Pair him up with Brent Grimes. Could turn this defense around, especially since Quan blew his knee out. If you're going to invest in Patrick Peterson, if you're going to give up that 1st-round pick, which I know Arizona is looking for for Patrick Peterson if they're going to trade him. And we don't even know it's a fact that they're going to trade him because just a couple of days ago, their owner said we're not trading him. So we'll see what happens. But I can tell you this much. Unless you're a Super Bowl contender, there's no reason to trade for Patrick Peterson. Tampa Bay, you're not a Super Bowl contender. So why would you do that? Why would you give up a first-round pick? And you just spent how many draft picks on corners this past year's draft? How many? Didn't you spend 3 of your first 4 picks or 2 out of your first 4 picks on corners? No, you're not. You're not spending another pick on a corner. No way. Let's see what we got. Cloud says, I called Pat Pete getting tired of Arizona and asking for a trade. You did say that. I do remember you saying that. Hope my birds get him and trade Mills. They refuse to play Rasul and bench Mills. That would be an interesting dynamic in Philadelphia. But again, how much draft capital do the Eagles even have to give up? It seems like over the last couple of years, the Eagles have been pretty loose with their draft capital. I assume that they have a first-round pick, which is what it's probably going to take to get Patrick Peterson out of Arizona. But do you really want to give up your first-round pick 2 years in a row? Like, that's how you end up being a bad football team, by giving away early draft assets because you need cheap labor. You need good football players that are young that you can build around. And if you're trading for a 28, 29-year-old Patrick Peterson, I don't know how old he is, but I know he's been in the league long enough to be somewhere in that late 20s area, 28, 29, he's somewhere in there. And you get him, and you don't want another Nnamdi Asomugha. You've done this before. You know, you get a guy that's in the prime of his career, and then you get him for a year or two, and then all of a sudden he's not the same guy. But we'll see. You know, Patrick Peterson probably still has a lot of good football left in him. He's a way better athlete than Nnamdi Asomugha ever was, so I don't want to put those two in the same conversation. Black LB says, who do you see making a move for for PP21? I pray and hope my Vikings do pair him. Damn, how many corners y'all want, bro? I know you got the injury to your rookie, but how many corners y'all want, man? Like, it's funny, all these teams, everybody want Patrick Peterson. Everybody can't get Patrick Peterson. You're actually a Super Bowl contender, so it would make sense, but do you really want to give up a first-round pick? Is that what is he the guy to put you over the top defensively? Is that what you're looking to do? I mean, maybe not. I don't know. Here's another guy, Angry Birds and Chaos. I would love Pat Pete in Houston. You're not winning the Super Bowl in Houston, so why would you want to give up a first-round pick for him? You're not good enough offensively in Houston to win a Super Bowl, so why would you want to trade for Pat Peterson? Again, unless you're going to win a Super Bowl or you're a true contender to win the Super Bowl, you don't need Patrick Peterson on your team. It's a waste of assets. Don't do it. Do not do it. The Vikings are a legit Super Bowl contender. The Saints are a legit Super Bowl contender, which is where he wants to go. There are a few more teams out there that if they decided, New England is another one, if they decided they wanted to pull the trigger and do that, I would endorse it. There aren't many teams, though, that I look at and say, that's a smart decision. You're not winning a Super Bowl this year. The Bucs aren't winning a Super Bowl. The Texans aren't winning a Super Bowl. There are too many teams out there that everybody wants to get them, but let's be honest with ourselves. You're not winning a Super Bowl. Angry Birds of Chaos says, I would love him in Houston. We need secondary O-line help, but it probably won't happen. Arizona holding him hostage. We'll see what happens. It wouldn't shock me if the Cardinals say, we're not trading him. We already stink and don't have many reasons to come to the stadium on a weekly basis. We can't trade away the one guy that, along with Larry Fitzgerald, make up the identity of our franchise. If you want to throw David Johnson in there, go right ahead. But he's struggling this year because the coaching staff in Arizona right now doesn't know how to use him. Anyway, let's get to Craig Smith says, you're my guy, Lou. ED29 is my favorite back of all time. The reason I wore 29. Love Eric Dickerson, man. That was my guy. He used to make it look so effortless. When he ran, it almost looked like he wasn't running hard at all, man. The dude was a natural athlete. Anyway, let's see if I can find any. Let's switch the direction of the show to the Amari Cooper trade and any other conversation you want to have. We've talked about Patrick Peterson for the last 5 minutes or so. Daniel Primrose says Patrick to the Chiefs. I don't have a problem with that. The Chiefs are a legit Super Bowl contender with the way the offense is playing. You get a guy like Patrick Peterson on that roster, and it could change the fortunes of that defense dramatically. I don't have a problem with that. I would listen to Patrick Peterson to the Vikings. I'd listen to Patrick Peterson to the Eagles. I'd listen to Patrick Peterson to the Chiefs. There are not many more teams in New England. There are not many more teams outside of that group. You may add one or two more teams to the list. New Orleans is another team I'd listen to, absolutely. But not many teams that I would listen to in that discussion. Yin Yang says, what's the news on Demaryius Thomas and E-Man saying, are they up for the trade deadline? So I talked about that during the Raiders video and the Dallas Cowboys trade video earlier. I talked about it on the lockdown coverage as well. But just quickly to recap, seems like they're having a fire sale out in Denver, and they're offering up 2-for-1 specials. You can get E-Man Sand, you can get Demaryius Thomas, you can get Chris Harris. There's a lot of stuff out there that they're offering up that's pretty enticing, man. Everybody's not going to get Patrick Peterson. A hell of a consolation prize is Chris Harris Jr. out there in Denver. All right, especially if you're looking for a guy that can play both nickel and out wide. Chris Harris Jr. is your guy, so don't sleep on him. But the Broncos are looking like they're about to start all over, probably fire their coach, and just start anew. And if they're going to do that, they got some items out there that are pretty intriguing, to say the least. Anyway, Black LB says, hell, our first rounders always getting hurt in their first season, so F it. He says, I'm with it, LOL. Hashtag Patrick Peterson, too many. So I hear you, bro. I hear you loud and clear. John Perez says, how would you feel about the Skins going after Devontae Parker? I told you I don't want anybody else's hurt merchandise at receiver. We've got enough hurt merchandise. 4 out of the 7 receivers that the Redskins had on their roster between the active roster and the practice squad have been injured at some point this season. We lost Robert Davis, our 5th-round draft pick 2 years ago, to another ACL this year. We lost Trey Quinn, our 7th-round pick, to an injury, an ankle injury early in the season. Jamison Crowder has been out the last 2 weeks. Paul Richardson missed the last game. Maurice Harris missed the first 3 weeks of the season, I believe, with a concussion. That's 5 receivers. I don't want anybody else's hurt stuff, man. We've got enough stuff off the streets as it is. I am good. Devontae Parker is talented, but I don't want anybody else's hurt merchandise. I'm good with what we got. I just want the Redskins to get healthy at receiver. That is all. I don't want to go out and trade for anybody's stuff. But like I told you, I would be interested in E-Man saying that is the only receiver I would be interested in the Redskins going out and trying to acquire. John Perez says, if my Redskins somehow, by the grace of God, got Patrick Peterson, I'll stop right there. He's not happening in D.C., nor would it be a good idea. I don't want to give up a first-round pick. We're not a Super Bowl contending team. No reason to waste assets on a young guy, on an older guy, when we can spend that asset on a young guy that can help us for years to come. I am good. I would much rather take that same first-round pick that you'd have to give up and spend it on an edge rusher next year in the draft. I'd love to do that instead. Cloud says, we have 11 picks. I feel what you're saying, but we are in win-now mode. I get that. He says, we honestly need more help on offense. I'm just tired of Schwartz not adjusting and starting Mills. I get it. I totally understand. You're not at practice every day, because as a Redskins fan, we used to cry about some of the same things. Why is this guy continuing to start? He sucks. The coaching staff knows better. You know, they see things in practice. They have the rationale for what they do. Sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense to us on the outside looking in. I love Rasul Douglas, but if you're going to play an aggressive style of defense, Rasul Douglas is a 4'6" guy. Maybe that's what scares them about Rasul Douglas. He's long, he's active, he's got great ball skills, but he's not fast. So if you're going to leave guys out on islands or you're going to play cover one, it's tough with a guy that can't run. So maybe that's why they're hesitant to put Rasul Douglas out on the field. But I know Mills is steadily getting burnt, and he bites on the double move all the time. I get it, but they know what they're doing. This is why they get paid. But I get it. You know, and if the Eagles were one of those teams in the Patrick Peterson sweepstakes, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I would not have a problem with it. McKenzie said, Cooper is overrated. I've said that for a while now. I'm with you. I've never been an Amari Cooper guy. When the ball's in the sky and your QB needs a guy, it's somebody. I've said it for a long time. Not an Amari Cooper guy. Let's see. Cloud says, we also don't play Rasul Douglas even though he's a playmaker. It's frustrating. I like him a lot. I told you. I liked him coming out of West Virginia. I liked his range. I liked his length. And I loved his ball skills. And he's proven to have those same ball skills at the next level. But for some reason, they don't want to put him on the field. KC says, Amari Cooper isn't going to help a quarterback who can't throw to open receivers, in my opinion. And I'm saying this after Alex Smith missed Jeremy Sprinkle wide open in the end zone. Facts. That's big facts. I said as much earlier on the video that I did. Emperor Meat says, Cowboys got fleeced. They also have many contracts up after next season. He says Rain, Dakota, Prescott, Jalen Smith, Cooper, and Zeke all coming up. So, and that's why I thought that this didn't make a lot of sense. You got a lot of money that you have to invest in some of the guys that are coming up. You've got a lot of money that you're going to have to pay to your offensive line if you want to keep that intact. I didn't see the rationale behind Cooper. Again, the Cowboys offensively, defensively, they're good enough to be a real contender in the NFC. And I think that was what they were looking at. And I like what Booger McFarland said tonight. If you're going to really take a hard, long look at Dak Prescott and identify whether he is a starting NFL quarterback or not, this is how you evaluate him. You go get him a number one wide receiver, and you say, all right, here's your number one wide receiver. No more excuses. Go get it done. If you can't, then we'll have to move on at the quarterback position. So I get it. I kind of get it from that standpoint. You still gave it way too much. That I'll never side with you on. But, okay, so you think you have a number one receiver? I don't think he's necessarily a true one in this league. But, okay, you think you got a number one receiver? You think Dak should be able to get the job done now? Let's see what he can do. Reese says, of course we should have won the game, Lou, because we did. Good team snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. So you guys are a good team now, huh? Okay, we'll see. Who do you guys have this week anyway? You have Cincinnati. You're on the road at Cincinnati. You're a good team? You claim you're a good team? Go beat Cincinnati in the jungle this week. Prove to me you're a good team. You do that, we'll have that conversation next week, which I fully expect you to go to Cincinnati and either get your doors blown off or lose. Either way, I don't expect you to come out of there with a dub, and we'll revisit this conversation next week. Yin Yang says, holy shit, let's get one of them. Now Dallas gave a first round up for Cooper. Denver is going to want a first rounder. I'm not giving anybody a first rounder for anybody. Now, if you tell me I can have E-Man Sand for a second round pick, I'll do it right now. Where do I sign? I'm not giving up a first round pick for anybody, though. Nobody is getting my first round pick. It's mine, and it's staying where it is, right here. But I'll give up a second round pick for E-Man Sand. I think that guy is a tremendous route runner. But he says Harris is awesome, and E-Man Sand is definitely a big plus. Yeah, Harris is truly a difference-making cornerback in a league where there aren't enough difference-making cornerbacks, which tells you Denver is potentially heading towards a huge rebuild if they're willing to part ways with a guy that is a difference-maker at a position where it's hard to find. I like Bradley Roby. He is not Chris Harris Jr. J. Camman says, I know it's a moot point, but that onside kick at the end was pathetic. I can tell you what the rationale was at the end of the game. He simply thought to himself, we got 5 seconds. If we recover an onside kick, if we kick the normal onside kick, we don't even have enough time to get off a completion to get us into field goal range because we botched the whole 2 quarterback sneak thing. So all you would have time for in that instance is a Hail Mary. Do you really trust your offensive line if the Falcons just rushed 4? Do you really trust your offensive line to give Eli enough time to set up shop, to throw it 60 yards down the field, to get it into the end zone for a Hail Mary? Hell no. So the only play you have is to pooch kick it and see if you can't have the Falcons F it up and recover it in field goal range. That's the only play they had, so that's why he did that. Emperor Meat says, Patrick to the Steelers is the best fit to me personally. I know like 80% of my family would love to have it happen. I could see the Steelers wanting to do something dramatic, but they have Joe Hayden. It seems like he can never stay healthy, but I don't see the Steelers giving up a first-round pick for Patrick Peterson. Now, what would be a good trade is, hey, I'll give you Le'Veon Bell for Patrick Peterson straight up. That'd be a hell of a trade, but they don't need a running back in Arizona. But you see where I'm going with that. I'll give you my problem for your problem. And we can both wash our hands clean and keep it moving. But like I said, they don't need a running back in Arizona. So wouldn't be a good fit. John Perez says, if you could go and get an edge rusher through trade, who would you get? I would personally try to acquire Dante Fowler Jr. from the Jags. The guy's a head case. That's the only thing about Dante Fowler Jr. is that he's a walking 15-yard penalty waiting to happen. But the guy is so explosive and dynamic off the edge. It's hard to turn down that kind of talent. If I could acquire one guy via trade, he'd be probably at the top of the list. He's such a dynamic edge rusher, and I know Jacksonville at one point was looking to move him. I'd have to look around the league first before I got back to you on that one. But, I mean, no team is giving up elite stuff. He'd probably be the most elite stuff you could get your hands on. So, if he could stay healthy, that's been a problem for him. And another problem would be that he's a head case. And, you know, our locker room, not the best locker room for head cases. Although, I will say, with Adrian Peterson, Alex Smith, and this infusion of Alabama boys, the locker room is starting to become a much healthier environment in the nation's capital. But I don't know if it's still strong enough yet to embrace a personality like Dante Fowler Jr. just yet. Let's take a couple more comments. Daniel Primrose says, hope Dunbar and Moreau are good to go for Sunday versus the Giants. We'll talk about that tomorrow. KC says, which edge rusher, if any, entice you in the upcoming draft so far? You know good and well I haven't looked at any edge rushers in the draft yet. I am not that far along. You know, I have tunnel vision during the NFL season. My focus is on the season, and that is it. I do watch college football, but I'm watching it as a fan, not as an analyzer. So I can't tell you what's going on. Gregory Lightbody says, do you think he says, do you think any of the wide receivers in the draft can be good in the NFL? And if so, could one go to the Redskins? I think this is going to be a weak wide receiver draft class. But again, I haven't studied the receivers, so I don't want to comment on guys that I'm not familiar enough with. Once we get to that portion of the season, I'll be glad to have that same conversation with you once I can start to get my hands on some of the tape and have time to analyze what these guys are about. Yin Yang says, do you see Alex getting better in the coming weeks? We'll talk about that tomorrow. KC says, is there any hope for Joshua Halsey in the slot after the Thad Moreau injury? He's got to get healthy himself. I think he's eligible to come off of the PUP list now. So I love Halsey. You know how I feel about him. We'll talk about that tomorrow as well. Atlas says, all right, Lou, can we officially put a fork in the Giants season now? When do they start the fire sale? I don't know if they're going to have a fire sale, but yes, they are done. Stick a fork in them. They are finished this season. Mason Sykes says, do you think the Jazz could make a move for a QB, someone like Derek Carr, Tyrod, or Jacoby Brissett? I think that they are getting together as a brain trust and talking about serious options, but they so badly want Blake Bortles to work out. I do too. And if they get Fournette back, I think they'll be just fine. I talked about that on the podcast. Remember, if you haven't checked it out already, please do so. Lockdown coverage out on Stitcher, on Google Music Play, on iTunes, on the website, louietnetwork.net. So I think they want to see what happens when they get healthy and if that will fix some of the problems that they've had at the quarterback position. But if you're the Jaguars, with as good as this defense can be, I wouldn't be surprised if they made a move to go get a guy like, and you know what, Tyrod wouldn't be a bad fit for that team because Tyrod won't turn it over. He's not going to make all the throws, but then again, Blake Bortles isn't making all the throws either. But what you know with Tyrod is he's not going to lose you the game. Similar to what he did with Buffalo, he's not going to lose you the game. And with that defense, you just need a guy that is steady and that when plays are there to be made, he makes them but won't lose you the game. And so I wouldn't mind a guy like Tyrod Taylor. I don't think Jacoby Brissett is necessarily a good option because he's still young. Even though he got a lot of experience last year, he's still young and he's still prone to mistakes. You're trying to stay away from a guy that's going to make mistakes. Tyrod would be a great fit, and you wouldn't have to give up a ton for Tyrod. You don't have to give – in Carr, you would have to give up a first-round pick. With Jacoby Brissett, if I'm the Colts, I'm putting a gun to somebody's head. You want my backup quarterback? I want a second rounder, no worse than a third. For Tyrod, you could probably get him for a hot ham and cheese sandwich and a bag of chips and a juice box. I'm talking fifth, sixth round pick, man. So if I'm the Jaguars, Tyrod would be the one I would look at if I was looking at one. Yin Yang says, do you think Jay and John talked about Cooper? They might have. They might have, but it's not up to Jay. In terms of what moves are being made, as we've seen. He has no input really on who the Redskins go out and trade for. He has input because we saw that. He didn't even know the Redskins were going out to get Alex Smith. So we know he has input when it comes to the draft, but he has no input whatsoever on player personnel during the course of the season. And I think I would prefer it that way anyway, even though I trust him and Doug Williams more than I trust anybody else in the organization in terms of player personnel and development. But anyway, John Perez says, how do you feel about Nick Bosa leaving Ohio State? I talked about that on my podcast. So go listen to the podcast. The last episode I did. Terrence Leach says, Justin Tucker missed an extra point. Anything is possible this season. The winds were swirling, bruh. So any game on the East Coast, the wind was really ridiculous. The Redskins win was ridiculous. The Jets game, the wind was stupid. That's why Kirk Cousins ended up going for it on 4th and 8 and throwing a touchdown pass to Aldrick Robinson. The wind was ridiculous in Baltimore. Any game on the East Coast, the wind was stupid. So Justin barely made a field goal earlier in the game where it went over the top of the upright. So it was a rough game for everybody on the East Coast kicking the football. If you weren't going in the direction of the wind, it was a tough night. And that's it. Appreciate you guys joining me. Remember, check out the podcast, Louie T Network Podcast. If you haven't already followed me on Twitter on my podcast page, I'm going to post the link to the new lockdown coverage after this stream meets its conclusion. But make sure you follow me on Twitter at LTNPod is my podcast Twitter handle. Follow me there to stay up on the latest with any happenings with any of my podcasts, lockdown coverage, or the Louie T Network podcast, which that should be out here in the next day or two as well. A brand new episode of that. If you haven't caught the last episode, it was a great episode. Check that out. It was a Way Back Wednesday episode, which I know about pencil fighting, man. Y'all grew up in sheltered environments. Y'all don't know nothing about pencil fighting. But I talked about that among a ton of stuff. Anything goes on the Way Back Wednesday episode. I'd love for you guys to give me feedback. I ask trivia questions every week, waiting for you guys to chime in on the Louie T Network podcast. So I'd appreciate you if you check that out. Follow me on Twitter at LTNPod as well as Louie T Network at Louie T Network on Twitter. Also, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to the Louie T Network if you haven't already done so, and share this video with the masses. I appreciate all of you guys checking out all of my content. Much more of it to come, so stay locked in to the Louie T Network. Remember, we're changing the game one live feed at a time, And if you're not locked into your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage it could be. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one. Take care.